I tweeted about this story earlier, and I could not quote the activists in this and the previous story because it's hate speech. And if I tweeted out some of these quotes, that the things they're saying about the LGBT community, I could have my Twitter account taken down. Isn't that funny? Isn't it funny that right now, conservative, Abrahamic conservatives, Muslims mostly, are protesting against LGBT rights, saying things that are so offensive I can get in trouble if I repeat them. Not just this. There's some other stuff on the other story. Can't talk about it. In the 90s and the 2000s, I heard such things you could not believe. The hate speech against the Christian community. My family owned a coffee house on North Halsted. This is considered, it's called Boys Town. It's a gay neighborhood. And I heard some pretty awful and hateful things about Christians and religious folk. And this was part of the spread of rhetoric that led, at least partly, to LGBT rights. Now, don't get me wrong. Most of the people that I've seen who led the charge for the LGBT community, especially in the 90s, did not engage in hate speech. But there was a lot of it. And these are the ideas that spread, just the ragging on Christian conservatives. But what do you do now when Muslims are a protected class and they're increasing their anti-LGBT rhetoric, they're targeting LGBT curriculum, and you can't speak out against them? It was not that long ago that Muslim parents protested at a school in, I think it was called Parkfield in Birmingham, the UK. And at first they were saying things like, we just don't want our kids to learn this stuff. And many people sympathized. In fact, some Christians actually showed up as well. But the rhetoric escalated. And then you actually had some of these Muslims chanting shame, not at the idea of teaching kids, at the idea of being gay, period. And that's what they're doing now. Their rhetoric is escalating. But I have a question. Where are the progressives? Where are the progressive social justice activists condemning this behavior? LGBT curriculum ended at a school. Protesters chanting shame at the notion that some people might be gay. And now they're at another school. No one. I have to wonder, is the British government, is the UK going to do anything about this? And it seems like the answer is somewhat. There's been some talk of looking into this, but nothing like what we see for misgendering. It's really interesting then. Because I have to imagine, based on my experience with, gay rights in the US and a lot of the rhetoric that was espoused in the 2000s, people aren't speaking up against religious conservatives who are coming for the LGBT community. And they won't. Because they can't. Because Islam is a protected class. So what do you do? Let's read the story. Dozens of parents and children protest outside a second primary school over lessons on gay relationships, handing out leaflets declaring, I'm not even going to read that because I could get in trouble. But they said basically that they don't believe in homosexuality. Dozens of parents and kids are protested against lessons on gay relationships outside a second primary school in Birmingham. Now, I understand some people have said, Tim, it makes sense they're protesting against teaching children these things because even Christians would agree with that. Yeah, okay. But that's the point. Which group is protected? The religious community or the LGBT community? In my growing up on the left, it's always been in support of the LGBT community because being gay is not a choice and being religious is. But now what? The reality is it's not just about the no outsiders curriculum. It's about their belief that they don't believe in being gay. They don't. That's what they're challenging. The rhetoric has escalated. They were chanting shame. So what am I supposed to do as somebody who my entire life have been an ally to many people in the LGBT community? I have friends who are trans. I have friends who are gay, as probably almost every single person in the United States does. And what do I say to them? Do I tell them to stop complaining because you're being a bigot against Islam? I mean, I'm going to support my friends, but what do I do? Intersectional feminism doesn't have the answer. Let's read on. Parents staged a demonstration against the controversial No Outsiders curriculum program at Anderton Park Primary School yesterday. They handed out leaflets that declared that they don't believe in homosexuality. Parents do not want their children's belief changed. We can see this photo, my child, my choice. Now, to a certain extent, I understand that argument. People are saying, Tim, but listen, they're teaching kids about sexuality. Okay, you want to argue that? I get it. Some people have pushed back saying, the curriculum isn't about sex. It's about the existence of LGBT people, LGBTQ, and that they're not teaching kids to be gay or anything like that, but they're just telling them like, hey, you might see this in your life. I'm not saying I'm for or against it. That's just some of the arguments being laid out. In my opinion, I probably lean more towards actually, I'll say this. I don't know at what age they're starting No Outsiders. I know that some of the protesters have said there's like 4-year-olds being taught this stuff. I was, I think, like 10 when they started sex ed. So maybe, at a certain age, it's appropriate. But you know what? I'm not a parent. I'm not. My bigger concern here isn't about whether they should or shouldn't have this. It's not that. And I can certainly understand if someone wants to have that argument. It's that a religious community is arguing against the LGBT community as a whole, as just saying they don't believe in it. This is the escalation. The reason I bring this up is that while I think, as I mentioned, I can understand you want to protest a curriculum, the rhetoric is going to escalate beyond this. As I mentioned, we already saw them chanting shame, not at the curriculum, at the idea of being told. They said something like, the school is teaching kids it's okay to be gay, and then they started chanting shame about that. That's different. It's escalating. Others read that they said the program promotes a whole gay ethos, and you can't be gay and Muslim, and there it is. You can't be gay and Muslim, they're claiming. So what do you? I just look. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what you do. Who are we supposed to protect? I have no idea. More than 80% of the pupils at Anderton Primary are Muslim. It is the second school to be hit with protests after the LGBT rights classes were paused at nearby Parkfield Community School when parents claimed the classes were age inappropriate and undermined them. And now you can see how they're escalating the rhetoric and going to more schools. And they probably will keep doing this. Parents are holding daily demonstrations outside the school gates. Let kids be kids. Say no to sexualization of children. Now, again, on the surface, that sounds like, oh, okay, of course, who wouldn't agree with that? But then you hear what they're actually saying in the leaflets they're handing out, and the rhetoric is escalating. Head teacher Sarah Hewitt-Clarkson has called on Education Secretary Damian Hines to intervene as her school faces a backlash over the lessons. She told Sky News has written to Mr. Hines to urge him to come and see what is happening. She said, "You almost need to sit in a school like ours and listen to what's being said, the unpleasantness that it causes and the homophobic nature of some of the things that are said to understand how what is written in Whitehall affects people on the ground everywhere else." Oh, I'm sorry. That is an entirely Islamophobic statement. And I'm not being facetious. I'm being 100% serious. How dare you call the Muslim faith homophobic nature? That is Islamophobia. You see where we're going with this? It's true. To claim that the religious beliefs of an individual is inherently homophobic is inherently Islamophobic. I always sided, as I mentioned earlier, on the side of you can't choose to be gay. Therefore, you can choose to be religious, so that's the side we pick. But look what the flyers they've given out. What can parents do? Ask your children what they've been learning in school. Ask your school what they have been teaching. Speak to other parents about any concerns you have. This is what two mums, Miriam and Fatima, did at Parkfield School, who are now campaigning to safeguard their children. No Outsiders is not a legal requirement. The Equality Act 2010 does not require the teaching of the No Outsiders program. They say the promotion. So the promotion of homosexuality and LGBT lifestyle to children, as they see it, is immoral and an unlawful imposition that contravenes the rights of parents to educate their children in consistency with their religious and philosophical convictions. Parents' rights are expressed clearly in the following acts of parliament. So as they're saying, it is Islamophobic to violate their religious rights by teaching kids about these things. Pupils are educated in accordance with the wishes of their parents. To keep your children safe, they're saying in this flyer, I got to be careful about reading some of this stuff, that engage in the democratic process, raise your voices and be heard, speak to your counselor. We have had so many emails from all over the country, head teachers in Croydon, Manchester, saying this is happening to me in my school, and this should not be the case. So yes, I am calling on the Secretary of State to come out very clearly on this. The aim of the No Outsiders program was to teach students about the positive values of diversity, tolerance, and acceptance, as well as LGBT rights, same-sex relationships, gender identity, race, religion, and color. Well, unfortunately, it's Islamophobic. So you're going to have to choose which marginalized community you get to, you have to protect. One of them has to get priority, and thus the true nature of intersectionality is facing another confusing defeat. In my opinion, I will always stand with the LGBT community on expanding their rights over the religious community. That's how it's always been. But now, thanks in part to the expansion of civil rights law, And some people have been arrested and imprisoned or jailed, I should say, not imprisoned, but jailed for misgendering. You have gone to extreme lengths to protect the Muslim community. What do you do now? This is going to be interesting. I just don't know. But anyway, I'll just wrap up there, I guess. I'll end by saying I fully expect escalation to continue. It's the second school to be hit with with demonstrations. We're hearing that teachers across the UK apparently are getting these complaints. The protesters' rhetoric is escalating. What do you expect? You reap what you sow. I got one more video coming up in a few minutes. I will see you then.